Bringing a new life into this world is a journey filled with expectations and plans. But what happens when those plans go completely off the rails? In the US, about 32% of births end in C-sections, while 68% are vaginal deliveries. But the numbers don't tell the full story. One major factor, Pitocin. The synthetic form of oxytocin is meant to speed up labor, but is it being pushed too aggressively? And could it be increasing the chances of the emergency C-section? Spoiler alert, that's exactly what happened to me. Then there's Vernita, determined to have a natural birth, fighting through every contraction to avoid intervention. Did it go the way she imagined? And Julianne? She found herself in an operating room watching her birth plan crumble while one of her daughters ended up in the NICU. Birth is unpredictable, and hospitals don't always have your plan in mind. In this video, we're diving into the unexpected twists, the medical interventions, and what you really need to know to protect yourself and your precious birth plan. Because when the time comes, being informed might just be the only way you have some control. So let's get into it. I feel like I nailed that.
Oh, here we go.
Whoa. So let's start there. What was y'all's birth plan? Did y'all have birth plans?
No, I didn't. Especially with my first one.
You had a birth plan?
No. And my first one, I purposely was like, I don't want to know anything. Like, no research. I don't want to know anything. Like,
Jules.
hopefully I'll know when I go into labor, and I don't know.
Wait a second. So you were just
Yeah.
like, well, so I've got this baby in me. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. Like,
Wow. That
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah.
on brand
Yeah.
for you.
yeah, it is. Like,
Well, and then
So-
I feel like almost weird about this because I'm like, well, and this is something we can't contradict each other. Thank goodness for you, Vernita, because
Yeah.
same. It took me so long just to be like, wow, I'm pregnant.
I was
That
gonna
then
say,
I
you
like,
were in denial for like 8 months that
Yes.
you were pregnant, though.
yeah. And then I remember being like, so finally I'm okay with being pregnant. And then I was like sad that it had to end. So I was like, I'm just going to act like it's not going to end. And I'm just going to keep this baby inside me forever.
Really?
And I yeah, it's so weird. But no, I never had a birth plan. I laughed in the face of birth plans because it was like, birth plan? What's a birth plan going to do? Like, I don't know. I didn't care about what doctor. I liked them all. Like there was like 5 at my practice.
Oh my gosh.
yeah, I went to a practice. It's all like women doctors. So I knew that was my one thing where I'm like, no man is,
Catching this baby.
going here.
Getting that close.
But I mean, yeah,
It's
but
not
I
Luke.
mean, yeah. So
Wow.
He's not going in there either.
yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Like, probably better chances with the doctor here. Like,
So,
yeah.
so y'all were like, when you spoke with your practitioners and they're like, were you planning to go to 36? Were you just planning to go natural? Like, or just literally like, whenever the baby comes, the baby will come and you have a doctor, may or may not be the one you've been seeing. That was kind of your mindset.
My whole entire pregnancy, all the way up to the hospital, felt very like at the end of each appointment, I said, and then what do I do next? And they told me the exact next thing to do. And I said, okay. Like, I feel like step by step. I mean, they did tell me, like, wasn't there like a 5-5-5 rule with like contractions, like 5 minutes between? They last for like, there was stuff like that was probably fresher because now I'm talking like almost 8 years ago. So I'm like, I think there was some stuff. And I did take like a breastfeeding class at the hospital and they did talk about some delivery stuff. And then at the end of that class, they took us on a tour. And I really felt like that was like me really going above and beyond. Like I was like, well, send me to the, I might as well be a doula because now I've toured the hospital. So I was very like passive, just passive. You tell me what to do. I didn't Google things. I didn't really even like talk to friends because I did have some good friends that were like really into it, like hot in tub in their living room into it. It just, one of my good friends did a doula like birthing center where there was no, you know what I mean? Like I had seen it done in way different ways, but what I took from it is that like, you have to really be invested in that. And I just like wasn't in a space to lean in and be super invested in the education part of it. And I have regrets. So I'm like, I can save these for later, but I'm like, and I regret that. So,
Well, hold on. So wait, did you all both plan to get an epidural? Was that it? Did you think about medication at all? So yes.
This
So the plan
I
was
mean,
drugs. Got it.
this was not the time to be like turning down drugs. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like in my life, this was not going to be when I'm like,
No,
that was
pass,
drugs.
like, pass.
that
It's
was my
good.
exact, oh
Like,
my
you
God.
know, like, I don't know. This didn't like, I
And I
guess
don't,
that like the epidural was happening, but
and
you
I'm
know,
laughing at how similar
yeah.
we accidentally were, because I'm like, okay, for someone, 2 of the 3 hosts on this podcast have done a lot of drugs together. We'll let you take a guess. Viewers, if you like this vibe, hit subscribe. But no, I literally said that to my doctor. I said, I've been saying yes to drugs my whole life. There's no stopping now. So I went in very like open, and I went in very trusting. I went in very just like, you're the expert. I am
You're the
clearly
doctor,
not. You're the
like,
doctor.
yeah.
I had one of my good friends is a labor and delivery nurse, and she was very like, just do what they say. And this is the kind of, and she would like check in with me and be like, da, da, da. And she came to the hospital after things went down. But it's like, no, I felt the same way. I'm like, some of the stuff I've taken at a music festival can't be as bad as Pitocin. Bring it on, Doc. So,
Oh my word.
yeah.
So what about you? Did you had a birth plan?
Well,
Yes?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. First of
Like
all,
in your mind, or like in written down,
no, it
or
wasn't written down. It was heavily
okay.
discussed between
Okay.
my husband and I.
Okay.
So one thing that I do think is like important to name, I think it's just different because we're all very different moms, but also the Black maternal mortality rate in this country is very high.
I've seen that and I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
God.
it's very
Yeah.
high because Black women have different risk factors, health wise in
Okay.
general. And
Okay.
then you add a layer on top of it where the interaction that Black women tend to have with doctors is that we are not listened to, that we don't know our bodies, that we don't feel pain. And this is like historical and long standing. Back
Huh.
when there were like, initial OBGYNs like in this country, they would test things out on Black women. So this is like long standing. So
Okay.
when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, I need a Black woman doctor. Like I was not going to anybody else because I didn't want to have to fight with somebody about what was going on with my body. So that was like step 1 for me in the plan.
Both my girls were we had Black
Really?
OBGYNs were
There's
delivered
only
by.
like 3 in Charleston. So it was
Oh.
like it was
Yeah.
like Hunger Games trying to get an appointment.
Oh
I
my
was going to
gosh.
ask
Yeah.
if it,
Huh.
if the search was intense.
Yeah,
Like,
the search is intense because there's not a
Okay.
lot. But
Okay.
I found a lovely woman that ended up working with me at Natalist down the line, and she was so great and like just did a full history, like really understood my mother's health picture and mine,
Yeah.
and took that into consideration, because one thing that was important to me was to birth without the assistance of drugs. And
Okay.
so
And come out alive, like God, right? Like Jesus, like oh my God. Like
yeah,
I just can't imagine like that has to be something on your mind, and along with everything else. Not that that was like actively on your mind, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
it was though.
dang,
It was.
yeah.
But part of my belief, to Lindsay's point earlier, is around and there's different studies you can look at, but what my big takeaway was, there's a lot of medical interventions that are happening that are unnecessary, and
Okay.
especially related to Black women, those can lead to death. So I
Okay.
really wanted to limit medical intervention unless it was absolutely necessary. But we do a lot of stuff medically, especially where birth is concerned, that's not essential, because the insurance company will pay them for it. And so they're like, yeah, sure, let me hook you up with one of those. And I
Right.
just really wanted to be clear that, like, I am not a science experiment, nor is my baby. And my body is actually set up to do this without medicine. So there's that. So
Okay.
wanted her. I also, though, I was like a little bit crunchy on this. I did want to give birth at home in my tub, but my
Oh.
family was not supportive of it. I
Ah.
do have a history of high blood pressure in my family, and everyone felt like that was like just a disaster. So what we settled on was I would give birth in a birthing center across the street from a hospital, so that if
Okay.
things got a little dicey, I could be transferred there. But
Easy peasy.
I just really, my husband Nora, I wanted to have our birthing experience be in a hospital, mainly for us. Both of our mothers are deceased. We spend a lot of times in hospital. We feel like hospital is somewhere you go when you're sick, not somewhere where you're giving life. So we didn't feel like the hospital was necessary because I was not sick.
Okay.
So
Huh.
that was kind of how we,
Yeah.
went
Well, these
about
two
it.
sickos went straight to the hospital, so
Yeah, like-
makes perfect sense.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, so just completely different mindset like going
Yeah.
into it. Now, in our reality, and I want to hear about y'all's as well, but in our case, so I went to this birthing center. I went, every week I met with a different midwife there. They had like 5 different midwives. And the idea of going to a midwifery is that you have to see
Midwifery.
everyone. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the practice.
I was just
Okay.
gonna make the joke
Yeah.
about like, isn't it called like midwifery? And then you
Yeah.
said it so smoothly. I'm like, well, I guess.
Guess that's it.
Never.
Yeah.
I've never heard that in my entire life.
Well, it's because
Huh.
it should be midwifery, but
Midwifery.
whatever.
Midwifery.
Midwifery.
Okay.
Go on with your
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
fancy.
So
yeah.
I met with a different midwife each week. And the idea is to get to know all of them because we
Yeah.
are going natural. We're not doing, any induction. So you'd never know who's going to be on call at the time that you
Right.
go into labor. So I went in each week and met with each of them. And, you kind of get your favorites of the ones that you hope that is on
Of
when
course.
but my doctor, the Black lady doctor that I had, she had to sign me over to them because at the point at which you decide that you want to give birth at a midwifery, your primary care physician has to change. And
Oh.
so basically like she was like overseeing, and then there was like another doctor that they work with that was technically overseeing, but she remained my doctor. So as soon as I finish having the baby, I'm back to her as my OBGYN.
Right.
So what I'm hearing is the Black doctor did not deliver your baby.
No, she didn't
Yeah.
deliver my baby because she's not a
Isn't that
midwife.
funny?
And
I know,
she-
but isn't
yeah. But she was
Yeah.
looking at all of my charts. Like
Yeah.
every test they had me take, she was still looking at. But she is a doctor who was only delivering in this specific hospital system.
Right.
Yeah,
And she couldn't step out of her system to come deliver for me. And
totally.
what we decided ultimately is it was more important for us to have the birthing experience we wanted than the doctor we wanted necessarily. And the midwifery she had approved and like researched, and she was very on board for us. And I felt confident in going with them because of her like sign off.
Right.
Right.
And
Okay.
I think this is that's a compromise. I think there'd be very few moms that we talk to that say like, this is my plan and it went exactly as I wanted it to. So it's like, it's cool because yours did end in like what I would call success. Like you set out with a goal of like avoiding the hospital, healthy, natural, and you did it. But it's worth noting, it did come with like you had to have some flexibility and some like trust and understanding, and you had to think outside the box. So it's like, you had your plan, but
So then you just went into labor,
Yeah.
right?
Well, okay. So
Okay.
towards the end of my pregnancy, so you're going like every week.
Yes.
And when I got around like 37 or 38 weeks, things got a little dicey with my blood pressure. And they said that I had preeclampsia. So at that point, that's when my like plan started to unravel a bit.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Because if you have preeclampsia and you go over too long, then you have to be induced. So like they basically had me take this test to determine that, and it said like I was like on the border, so it wasn't bad, but like things could turn bad at any second. So
Mhm.
that was at 38 weeks. Well, my daughter didn't come out to 41. It was like
Mm.
41 and a half. And they said if I didn't give birth by the day she came, that I would have to be induced. And when they told me that, y'all, I just broke. Like, I was like, oh my God, I've gone through all of this.
Yeah.
We're so close.
Yeah, we're so close. And at that point, my doctor had already signed me over to the midwifery. So there was no like backseats for me to be like, oh, well, if I'm going to the hospital, then I want my doctor back. And like, I still didn't want to be induced. So
Right.
I was just like, I really didn't want that. I didn't want any Pitocin. I didn't want to be in the hospital. I didn't want any of that. And I was just like breaking down. And I was like, please come, please come, please come, please come. God, please let her come.
Did you start doing all the things like
Yes.
walking and bouncing on the
We
ball
were
and
walking nonstop. I was on the
nipple
ball.
stimulation?
We did the nipples, honey. We did tea. We did castor oil. We did, I mean, I was doing it all. And then there's something that the midwifery gives you that's called like the birth cocktail. And it's like
The birth what?
cocktail.
The birth cocktail.
It's
Okay.
like a
The birth
mixture
cock.
of castor oil. It's like it's like 5 things that you're supposed to mix together. It's basically disgusting, and it's supposed to make you go into labor. And I was getting ready to drink it when I had my first contraction. And so I was like, yes. Because it was the same day.
Yeah.
I know, it was the same day that they said if she doesn't come today, we're gonna have to induce. And I was about to drink that nasty cocktail. So I was just like so grateful that she started to come.
It started happening.
Yeah, it started happening. And then we called them. That was like 9 a.m. We called and they were like, yeah, your contractions like aren't, close enough yet. Just stay home. And that's the thing, like you get to labor at home, you get to labor in your own comfort for a long time.
And they want you to stay out for a long, right? They really are like, don't come until the baby's crowning.
Exactly. I didn't go to the birthing center until like 1 or 2 in the afternoon after starting labor at 9. And then I labored there from like 2 to 6:45 in the tub, which I wanted to have a water birth. That was my other plan, was a water birth. But they were watching my blood pressure very closely, and my blood pressure and her heart rate started to go up at about 5:45. So they made me get out. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to have to transfer? And then my water
They're
broke.
like, ma'am, we're just having you get out of the tub.
just get out of the tub, lady.
But y'all, the water takes so much pressure off. It was like night and day being inside the water. So I get out of the tub and my water broke. And
gravity.
then it was time. It was time to go. Yeah. So
and then what was the go time? Like when it was it quick from there?
It was quick. I gave birth within 15 minutes of getting out of the tub.
Wow.
Yeah. It was so fast. It was so fast. I pushed 3 times.
And did like you catch your own baby? Any dramatic, like just like natural?
So it was a little bit dramatic. So friends of ours, we shared with them that we were pregnant on the same day that they shared with us that they were pregnant, and our babies were due a week apart. Well, we got to the birthing center at like 1. They came in at like 5. And we're like, you're kidding. You guys are giving birth today too? So they were in the room next to us. There's only 2 rooms at the birthing center.
Oh my gosh.
And it's so rare that people are there at the same time. But they came in around 5. And I got out of the tub about 6:45. And I'm like, I gotta go. Like, babe, go get the midwife. Where's she at? Come to find out, she was delivering their baby already next door. And I was like, what?
They beat you to it.
All day.
Oh my gosh.
Super sweet because our kids were born on the same day at the same place.
That's really cool.
The midwife literally jumped out of her room, came in mine, and she told me, she was like, oh, you're ready. And I gave 3 big pushes and Justice was out. And then like an hour later, like our husbands went to go get us like lunch meat sandwiches,
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
like ate them there with our babies. So that was, there were
That's
some things that
cool.
were unexpected. I was very grateful ultimately to be able to give birth unassisted in that way. But, the preeclampsia I had not planned for. The scariness around potentially having to go be induced, I had not planned for. I really wanted to stay in the tub the whole time. That didn't work out, but
They kicked your ass out.
they kicked me
Yes. They're
out.
like, this is not a spa.
Yeah,
Get
yeah.
Yeah,
Ma'am.
get
Yeah.
out.
to step in.
We had like lavender oil and everything in there, but
Yeah.
just so grateful. Like my blood pressure came down, and we were able to go home at like 1 a.m. And
Wow.
so it was ultimately, I think, ended up very good. But like, Lindsay, your story was a bit crazy, and
Wild.
we almost
Well, I thought
lost
this
you
whole
there,
episode
champ.
was going to be about how birth plans are terrible and they never work out. And I'm like, yours sounds pretty perfect. So
Yeah,
Mine
like
mostly works out. I would say
Yeah.
like 90% mine worked out.
yeah.
yeah.
So mine, I can go. Yeah, mine is the exact opposite. Like, yeah. So mine was like I blame. So okay. So I went in really nonchalant. I did no research, and I said, sure, whatever, doc. I was late. I wish I remembered days, but I was about a week late from my due date. And so day one is they like soften the cervix with some gel, and then you go home. And then the next day was like, come in and we're going to start you on a low dose of Pitocin. Again, I'm just like, what do I do next? And so I
Did
was
you know
this,
what Pitocin was at the time? Like, were you?
I mean, like labor inducing. Yeah, I did for that purpose, but I didn't like do any research on it. I didn't read about it, statistics, none of that. I knew I should, like, I think that was my way of protecting myself, to just be like, the less I know, the better. But so I went back in and they gave me like a slow drip, and it slowly increased it for like 12 hours. And then they were basically like, wow, nothing's changed at all. Go home, and we can't continue to increase it. We've maxed you out. So now you have to like come off of it for another 12 hours and then come back again. So then
how far, like this was like a
this is
couple
probably
days?
getting to like 8 days past my due date, which
Okay.
like, this is also when you talked about, Vernita, your doctor was like, they got my history and my mom's history and all this stuff. I'm like, my mom, and this all came out afterwards, but I was 2 weeks late. And back in the day, that was just no big deal. The baby comes when the baby comes. But so like, when I piece it together later, I'm like, I just think my kid was going to be on the same genetic, like slow roll out. And and I knew, like, as nonchalant as I was, I felt very like, can't we just wait? Can't we just wait? I kept saying like, can we just wait? Can we just, and I was walking and I was doing all the things, but it was like the feeling of like, what's the rush? But then they freak you out because they're like, statistically, like every day
once
you go
you're
late,
over,
every day it gets like riskier and riskier, even though I was like a totally healthy, no issues person. So then I felt like they started to scare me into like, well, I can't make my own decision, because what if I'm wrong? I'm going to like regret it. Just again, follow the doctors. So I came back, I think like the third day in a row, and then it was like game on with the Pitocin. So they started at a higher dose and stepped up on a higher dose, and contractions started, and they were brutal. Like, I think I'm a pretty like pain tolerant person, and I'm like, they were brutal. So then I said yes to the epidural. So and again, I've read about this later, it's like, that is such an unnatural way to start having contractions, that it's like, they are brutal. They're like ripping your body, because it's like not ready yet, and it's just doing it. So it was like, I thought like, God, this can't be normal. But then I said yes to the epidural. I said yes to everything. So there's also like a laughing gas or whatever that was like taking a nitrous balloon, for anyone else that's done things at music festivals. Like, they'll like, whoa, 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 like you just feel like wild, and you doze off and you wake up and whatever. So I did all that. And then long story short is, everything was fine, and the contractions were coming, and the doctor came in, and it was a doctor I love, and she was amazing. So we'll talk about that. But she came in by coincidence. This is where I'm like, better be lucky than educated. I don't know. but she was like at my bedside and she was like, hey, I just came to, and you don't see the doctor very much in a hospital. I don't know if you know that, V.
Yeah.
But she just happened to be in my room and she was like standing right next to me at my bed. And she was like, hey, like things are looking good. They're whatever. I forget. I don't know what my like dilation was or anything. But as she was talking to me, like my whole body seized up and all the monitors went nuts. And I remember the feeling of like, I literally couldn't move my arms, my legs, nothing. I felt like I was burning and I could barely catch my breath. Like I remember the feeling of being like, I'm going to die. And I haven't talked about this like in 8 years. I feel like I could get emotional, but I had to like spend all my energy on keeping my breath, like keeping my oxygen. It was that hard to breathe that all I could do was just like gently get in enough air. I couldn't talk. I couldn't do anything. The room fills up with people. So some of this to me, I'm like, all I remember is focusing on breathing. And then they were like wheeling me down the hall. So some of this information is from my family. So like, as much as I'm like, these people screwed me with too much Pitocin, they were also like so well trained for what happened. So like the doctor standing right in front of me was like, actually, you know what? We're going to get that baby out right now. I think she's ready. And like, I'm still just like, I can't breathe. Like I like really can't breathe, but I'm still weirdly not freaking out. I'm just like, what's going on? But she stayed so calm, the room filled with nurses. And Kevin said like someone came over, handed him a gown and was like, and then there was a lady standing at the door and she was like 90 seconds, 60 seconds. And she was their timekeeper. So basically, I had an amniotic embolism, I think is what it's called, where the uterus like ripped and the fluid gets into your bloodstream and it's basically like poisonous, like acid, whatever. And that's why my body, it like seizes up your heart. It seizes up, people die from it. It's very like, it's scary, but it was like the little, and they, after the C-section, they like examine the whatever placenta
the fluid or whatever.
And they found the tear in there and they were like, yeah, this is what it is. But they like rushed me down the hall and they were saying also like they would have had to knock me out really quickly if I hadn't had the epidural. So it was like weird because I was able to be awake. And I literally, by the time I got to the C-section room, which was like 90 seconds later, my breath was starting to come back. And I was like, okay, everybody. And at this point, they like strap you down like Jesus Christ. And you're like shivering, convulsing. And I'm like, it's okay, everybody. I'm back. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I'm good to go. I caught my breath. I don't know what happened. Like still just being like such a like, all right, what's next? And they were like, we're getting the baby out. And I was like, okay. It took me like that long to then I was like, well, what do you mean? And like, we're doing a C-section. I'm pretty sure they were already cutting me at this point, but I was so numb and out of it. So emergency C-section to the max where it was like, they went from, we're going to push soon to like, we got 90 seconds to get this baby out. And there was like a timekeeper on the clock. And then my labor and delivery nurse came and she was really who brought it home. She worked at that hospital. She had done it for like 10 years. It's Julia. You guys probably both know her, like military wife. She's worked in a ton of hospitals. I really trusted her. And she came in and talked to the doctors. She was also there for my parents because it was like an emergency C-section. Only Kevin was allowed. And my mom was in the room watching all this happen. So my mom was like, someone tell me what's going on. I'm going to cry over my dang mom. But she was freaked out because she saw like the monitors go crazy. She saw everything. And no one would tell her anything because they were just like busy, I guess. And so Julia came in and knew people and was like, hey, like, just give me the rundown. And then she got the rundown and then she went and found my parents and was like, she's okay. Here's what happened. Da, 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 da. And like, everybody was okay. And I was back in the room and everything was fine. But it was like, my brother came in probably an hour later with like flowers. Cause we had said like Lindsay had the baby and he's my big brother. And he walked in and we didn't mean to be this way, but he was like, what happened? And he said his heart dropped because the like energy in the room, he thought something was like really like wrong with the baby. He thought the baby died. Like he walked in and was like, what happened? Cause he had just walked into this like post-traumatic thing where we're supposed to be joyous. And we were kind of like, I think I almost just died. Like I just almost like flatlined on this like freaking table. And like Kevin, same thing. He was very shaken for a month. Like he was not well about it. Cause I think for a new dad, it was like that weird, like, what if I lost my wife and then I just had a kid or what,
Yeah.
So it was traumatic. And so like, that's where my birth story is really from. Like, I'm laid back about a lot of things and I really do not regret a lot of things, but I regret they did the best they could do once we had gotten ourselves into that situation.
Yeah.
So I'm like super pleased with the nurses and the doctors in their response, but it's like, man, you get one shot at this. And like, I wish I had leaned in and like really initially I wanted to do the midwifery just because I was such a little hippie and my mom talked me out of it and I don't care. It's not her fault. But like, she was like, no way, you're going to a hospital. And it was like, just that quick. I was like, okay, I'm going to a hospital. So like, I really do feel like these women that I'm friends with that had crazy birth plans and were so rigid. I'm like, oh, actually, you are correct. And I am incorrect because I thought it was nuts. And now I'm like,
fail to plan, you plan to fail, Lindsay.
So then with your second baby, did you do anything differently or no?
Well, hilariously, this is where I like eat my own words because I'm like,
no, she learned nothing.
Yeah.
Well, no, not that I learned nothing, but I'm like, well, at that point, I already had the scar, I already had the C-section. So I was like, you know what? Let's just schedule this one.
True.
Yeah.
So I did a scheduled C-section. And let me tell you, night and day, like you go in like a dentist appointment. They're like, be here at 10 a.m. I was showered. I was well rested. The kid, like Zoe, older sibling was taken care of. And then you roll in and they are just clockwork. They move you through this conveyor belt, which is like, I got other issues with that. But it was, I mean, music on in the C-section room. And there wasn't the same, whatever they gave me for the emergency, I was convulsing uncontrollably on the table, shivering. And like, it was like wild. Whatever my body was going through was really, really intense. And with the scheduled one, I don't know if it was just like less drugs or whatever, but with the scheduled one, it was, I was like chilly and they had warm blankets on me and I was like shivering a little, but I wasn't like seizing. And then you kind of know. So I'm like, even just the recovery from the second C-section, I'm like, I know that at day 12 and a half, I'm going to be able to like get up without, like you just like, there's an inline because it's gnarly how bad a C-section hurts at first. Like it's wild.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah. So no, I learned nothing, but I just took the easy way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did. Yeah.
I forgot because like I don't talk about it. It's a weird, even when moms are sitting around talking about their birth story, I'm like, I'm not like, well, let me tell you about mine. Cause I'm just like, it's almost embarrassing where you're like we laugh about it and it's funny. And I really am okay with it. Like it is who I am, but I'm like, it's a little embarrassing to be like, it's possibly the most important day of your life, but you don't know that until you're a mom. So like you're going in blind, but it's like, if I knew what I know now, I'm like, this is it. There's nothing that's going to be more valuable to me for the rest of my life than my health and my kids' health.
Yeah.
And I think if you approach it that way, it can make the classes and Googling and researching like not feel stupid. Cause I just felt like, well, they're going to do what they're going to do and doctors know best. But it's like, no, you're like, you don't want to be a statistic. You want to make it personal.
But I also don't think you should feel stupid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because like what happened to you could have happened to you even if you had, like a friggin' binder of this is going to happen.
Exactly.
And this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I feel like your case, it could have been,
Yeah. Well, and my mom in that old school thought I feel very like they're overusing Pitocin and like, it's not natural and it's hard on a woman's body. Like that's my stance. And I have no proof that that's what happened to me, but I'm like, they pumped me full for like 48 hours. Then my body was like, what the? And it like shut down. So I'm like, you just can't tell me otherwise. But then my mom, like old school, a month later was like, good thing you didn't go to that midwifery, huh?
You're like
she took the opposite of like,
she's been holding on for that for a whole month. You know what I mean?
She's
just
like, good thing
for,
I
like,
saved your life with that good advice. And it's like,
oh my gosh.
But yeah, I'll let her have that one where I'm like, you're right. Because if stuff does go wrong, there was literally no less than 10 people that were in my room in 30 seconds. And it was the anesthesiologist like amping up the epidural. It was the
epidural,
doctor. It was all these nurses. Kevin had his own personal nurse the whole time to like make sure he was there, but not in the way. Like they
Right.
were such a well-oiled machine, which my kickback to that is I'm like, well, how often does that happen?
Yeah.
You know, like if you're
Right, to
that
get
well oiled
that
at the
ready to go.
emergency, it's like,
Right.
dang, what are we doing here,
Yeah,
people?
I
Yeah.
can see your mom taking that angle for sure, and my mom probably would have done the same thing. But I also am, I definitely am. I err with you of like, did your body need all that? I mean, you were 30, you were
Yeah,
healthy,
31.
having
Yep.
your first kid, like, and I would love
I
to
was
see
living
those
on like Chick-fil-A
statistics.
milkshakes. So if I had to like pick someone else to blame, it was probably those 8 a.m. You know, their milkshake machine is on first thing in the morning.
You're the one who
Get
taught
that
me that.
Oreo milkshake at
Yes,
8
yes,
a.m.
yep.
That's right.
But I
Oh,
would love
Lord.
to see the data on like how dangerous it actually gets, like once you get past 38 weeks. Cause like it's just so opposite. And I'm sure I knew it at once upon a time because when you first get to the midwifery, they like go over all of this with you and to make sure that this is the right choice for you. And because some ladies, they find out more information, they're like, actually no, I would prefer to go the hospital route. But Justin and I, after we learned, we were like convinced. So I can't remember the data, but I know that many women go past 36 or 38 weeks, you know, like
Well, and 40, like, so that was my thing is I'm like, 40 is full term.
yeah,
Like 36 is like, cool. The baby's good.
It's fine.
Ready,
Yeah.
But I'm
ready
like,
It's
if you
okay.
40
Yeah.
is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it feels like that's the part where I'm like, feels a little like Ford factory conveyor belt where you're just
Well,
like,
and it's like curious because with my mom, I was also like, I was supposed to be due on Halloween and my birthday is November 18th. So I was
yeah.
also like over 2 weeks. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what happened? Like, what changed? Like, I came out great. Like, everything's
So great.
good.
So
So,
great.
you know, any testament to that, you know. But I do wonder of like, yeah, what is the studies or what like actually
So
are the
did your
risks, you know?
Jules, did your doctor do any kind of, did you, because it sounds like we were similar, but like, did they get your family history? Like, how did that go?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Like, and with Stella, so I was supposed to be induced at like 41 weeks. Like, so my due date was February 2nd, and I think I was going to go in and get induced on the 9th. And then that morning, or I think it was like 1 a.m., I woke up and was like, oh my God. Like, because my big thing was like, how am I going to know I'm in labor? You know, which like looking back is like, you're
You
gonna
know.
Is
know.
this
Yeah.
gas?
But like I felt like, how am I gonna know, you know? So like I went into labor at home the day like I would have gone in to like get induced, and we went to the hospital. Um and like everything moved, like I didn't get Pitocin, everything just moved along at like a normal pace, I guess. And I think I started pushing, I don't remember, but I pushed for 4 hours.
Ooh.
Um and it
Why?
just, well, and I think I was just like, I can keep, because like it was like a game almost, like I had the
Like, were you
epidural,
actually
so
pushing or were you
like
contracting?
actively pushing for
Like
4
feet up in the
hours,
stirrups.
like in the
Like
stirrups. We had the rope like going, like type of thing
What's
where
the
like
rope?
it's like a
creates a
rope
little
that
downward
like,
pressure.
yeah, like Luke had like the, or this might have been, yeah, Luke had the, because they were just trying to like get her like down, like to, like they just couldn't get her out, and like they're
Wait,
like,
I'm
do you want
sorry.
to,
Where is the
yeah,
rope? What?
like,
I
so I
don't.
feel like my legs were up and like I am holding on to a rope and like he's holding on to the rope, and like I don't
Like a
remember,
dog
I have,
chew toy rope?
yes, like a dog chew toy rope. Where I'm like, what was that? Like saying it out loud makes me be like, oh, like what was that? Like friggin' South Carolina like got me with that, you know. Anyway, like, but I gave birth in North Carolina. So anyways, yeah, so, and like they were even like, do you want to see, like we can like see her head, you can see her like head. But I pass because like, you know, just cuz. Um and then like they were finally like, we can't like let you keep going. Like we usually stop people like at 3 hours. Like you can't keep pushing. So we think you should like have a C-section.
So wait,
And were you
you were like
exhausted?
dilated enough for them to be like, it's time for you
Oh
to
yeah, I
push.
was at like a 10.
Okay.
Like fully dilated. Yeah, so we had got to the hospital probably at like 3 a.m. and she was born at I think like 6 p.m. So like I had labor like at this point I'm
You must have been
exhausted.
Exhausted.
Oh yeah. And then they're like, okay, like we're gonna do a C-section. And I like my mom had a C-section with me. Like I knew Lindsay like had C-section. Like so it never felt like
too crazy
where I'm like, okay, like if that's what we're gonna do, that's what we're gonna do. But then I remember like I think like my dad came in and like, when you have to sign stuff where you're basically like, okay, if I die, like,
whatever happens.
it like, yeah, but I think it hits you that like, oh, it is like a major surgery. It's not like, it's a big deal. It's not just whatever. So then I like remember like my dad coming in and that's when like I kind of got emotional and a little bit like, oh God, but then like went in and it was, like totally fine. Like
they
good
have to
experience.
like push the baby back up in there like after it was so close to coming out.
I don't think so. I think like it kept like going, like she'd go in and then I'd stop pushing and it would be like, yeah. So like my body was just friggin' slurping her back in.
Daddy was like, this is my baby.
Yeah, like checks out. Like, but yeah. So, excuse me. Yeah.
Speaking of, one of the things that came through your birth canal is
I saw like sissy sleeping.
Okay, I'll be up in a sec. Can
Julie,
you go
you're
like
such a
hang
sucker
out?
because I still make Justice go to bed on time as if she has school tomorrow.
And I'm like, it's almost 10. Get that kid to sleep.
Okay, I'll be right there. Okay.
I need another hug.
Okay. Hey.
Good night, Willow.
Yeah. Okay. I gotta finish my work. Okay.
She's on to you. She said that ain't no work, Mama.
Like, so yeah, first C-section, was fine. The recovery, it sucks, but it is what it is. But then my second, Willow, was my like NICU baby. And basically I went in, I think I was like 34 weeks maybe. But here's the
it was, now that you say that, I'm like, I remember she was little.
Yeah, well, I went in for just like a regular appointment and my blood pressure was just really high. And I've struggled with like weird blood pressure my whole life.
I bet.
Not my whole life, but I get like nervous and then I feel like my blood pressure goes up. But I don't know. So it's just like a whole thing. But my blood pressure was super high and they kept taking it. And then they were like, okay, like this is a regular like appointment. Luckily Luke was with me because we had planned to go to Costco afterwards. And
shout out to Costco.
Shout out if they want to sponsor, or
please,
like
Costco.
Yeah, please. And then they were like, well, you need to go to the hospital just so they can like monitor it. And in my mind, I'm like, if we're going to the hospital, like we're having this baby, like they're not.
Oh, see, I'm surprised you thought that. I'd be like, okay.
No, I was like, we're not getting out of there. So we get to the hospital and so I wonder if it is just how they work where they don't want to make anyone alarmed. But it was like a very like I got there and it was like, okay, put on this hospital gown, and I'm a little bit like, I thought we were just like monitoring my blood pressure. But I'm in like triage and then they're giving me, I can't remember what they gave me, like I don't know if it was like magnesium or they give you something. And then they're taking my blood pressure. It's like not going down. And then like the doctor comes in and she's like, okay, like we're going to have this baby. So I had planned to do like a scheduled C-section at like 40 weeks or whatever. But yeah, and it was kind of like, we're like, well, why? Like, do we have to? Can I just go on medication? Like, what's the deal? And she was just kind of like, no, like you have to have this baby. Like, and I remember like both of us were like, well, like we kind of lost our ability of like to choose anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that like I'm like, were they like not telling us everything? Because we felt like, oh, this is kind of casual, whatever. But they're like, no, we need to go. Like you're getting in there. We're going in next. And like I had never thought of like, oh, I could have like a preemie. I just didn't
Yeah.
seem like that was not something that ever crossed my mind. And so they're like, at this point, the only like the biggest risk is like the lungs aren't like fully developed. So we'll have to probably like give her like steroids or whatever. Um, or I don't know. I kind of like blocked it out, and to be totally
Yeah,
honest,
that's
like even
fair.
talking about it now, I'm like, oh God.
That's how I felt. Do you feel like almost emotional? Kind of like
Yeah,
bringing it up
yeah,
again? Yeah.
yeah. And then like go in, we have a C-section. And like with Stella, with the C-section, like they like put them right like on you, and then they go clean them, and then like you get your baby.
Yeah.
So with Willow, like I didn't get that. They like had to take her. There were like a lot more people in the room, because like she had to have her own team. And so yeah, like I didn't get to like hold her, or like they were just like, she's okay, she's okay. And then that was kind of like it. So then they had to bring her like right to the NICU, and they sewed me up or whatever and put me in. It was like, oh wait. So then this is wild. I was in then the waiting room for 7 hours because it was COVID and they didn't have like
Oh.
cleaners. Um, and I'm just like laying there, like in retrospect, like I'm like, what the heck was happening? So Luke is then just like up with her. Um, and then finally I was like, can I like go see my baby? So they had to like wheel me. I'm still in like a hospital, like I can't walk, like
Yeah.
anything. So like they wheel me up. And then she's like in, like I can't touch her, I can't hold her. She's in whatever.
Oh God.
Um,
How emotional was that seeing her like in that?
it was almost like you disassociate from, like you're like, this can't be real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's behind me right now.
This can't be real.
this can't be real. Oh, I think she left. I don't know where she went. Anyways, so yeah, it was horrible.
When did you hold her for the first time?
I think honestly can't remember. I think it was like 24 hours after she was born, maybe.
Wow.
It was a while, and there was nothing wrong. She had her lungs like weren't fully developed. And I mean, she was still like 6 pounds. So she wasn't like
Okay.
tiny.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for mom's genetics.
Oh
there
God,
on
I
the-
know, right?
And milkshakes.
So
Big
yeah,
bones.
yeah. But like another thing I remember is the room they put me in, like on the maternity ward, was like right on the corner, and I could like hear so I didn't have my baby with me. I was just in the room by myself.
Hmm.
But where I was is I could hear like everybody else with their baby or everybody else leaving. So like that was really, really hard.
Wow.
And then we got discharged, so we like left the hospital without our baby. So that was like very hard, and it kind of reminded me like different when you talked about with your adoption loss, when you're going back on the plane and you're like, well, we have all this baby, like we have this empty stroller and this empty car seat, where it's the same thing. You have like, you see all these people with car seats and stuff, and you're like, I just had a baby and here I am leaving the hospital like without her.
When did you all get to take her home?
I think she was in the NICU for 10 days.
Yeah.
So long story short, I think you need to learn to like advocate for yourself and
Yes.
really kind of know what's going on, because then after the fact, it was like they had been kind of keeping an eye on my blood pressure, but I had no idea that it was even like a factor.
And it makes you wonder, were there things that you could have done to like improve it,
where
like
I'm
bed
like,
rest or nutrition or something?
or like I was always just like, well, why like not on like blood pressure medication? Or like what?
Yeah.
So it was just like a really weird, I felt um like I didn't get all the information, and just, a lot of, I guess, blame, or just like like I was too laid back about, you know what I mean? But everything worked out. Everybody's fine, but definitely, having a NICU baby was never, part. I did
In
not
the
have any
plan.
plan, but that was not like even in the radar,
Yeah. Well, and that's
Um,
my like speech too, because I feel like we are speaking to the moms that are like, Jesus, take the wheel. Everything will be fine. This is what I'm meant to do. I'm like, yes, but man, that guilt comes on strong when you have a very educated doctor telling you the statistics of this and that. But I think if you do get educated and empower yourself to like, they're scary, but they don't define you, and
Yeah.
like choose
I
wisely,
also like having a NICU baby, like opened me up to, like, I guess, things that can go wrong, that like a lot can go wrong, because you're in there and you're feeling like, just blessed that our baby's fine. We're just working on like eating and making sure she's like gaining weight. Where there's other babies that like are not going to be fine.
Mm.
And then there's other parents that are going through things that you're just like, how can you humanly go through this,
Mhm.
Or there was one little boy at one point when she was in the room next to her, who was like coming up on like a year old. And I don't know what was going on. He had like a lot of delays or whatever. But like the
But had been in the
parents,
NICU for like a whole year.
yeah. And then once
Whoa.
you, I think, get to a year, you get moved into like, I don't know if it's like
Children's hospital.
children's or
Yeah.
whatever, Um, but all the time, it was only 10 days, but we like never saw the parent. We talked to the nurse, and they said a little bit of just like, well, they had to go back to work. Like life has to go
Yeah.
on in a way. So it's just sad. It just,
Super sad.
really sad, and just all the things that like can happen, I guess, that you don't realize until you're, I guess, in that space.
Yeah.
So
I also would do a plug for like controllables and uncontrollables. So also just the simplicity of like, and I made a joke earlier about like, I was eating milkshakes at 8 a.m. and I'm like, that's also a huge regret, because again, it's like, we're talking 9 months to like maybe drastically change an outcome that's going to affect you for the rest of your life. And it's like, again, you can't know this when you're not a mom. Like
Right.
you don't have this brain type when you haven't become a mom. But now that I'm a mom, I'm like, I would never do anything to put my kid in danger,
Yeah.
including nutrition.
Chick-fil-A
Yeah.
milkshakes.
Yeah. And it's like wild
Yeah.
to be like, there's a lot more that I could have done that has nothing to do with the hospital or even the last month. Like all of it could have, like the stretching and the pelvic floor and all the things that I just was like, I'm not doing it. Like, it's like, oh, just lean in and do it, because it's only,
That
6 to
short
9
period of
months,
time.
and
Yeah.
it could
Maybe do it.
drastically change the outcome for you and your baby.
Mhm.
Well,
So,
and the one thing that I would just stress from my experience is finding a healthcare provider that you feel like hears you and that you feel like is there for you. My doctor, like from a dollars and cents perspective, should have never signed me over to the midwifery. Like
Mhm.
her pockets would have been better off had she kept me as her patient. But she saw the total picture. She heard where I was. She gave me some guardrails and things to look out for, questions to make sure that I asked, and sort of blessed me on my way. And in hearing you all stories, and also just like stories from other women, I can't stress that enough, that your relationship with your healthcare provider matters so much in this total process, just from like how you're feeling. And I built a relationship with all the ladies at the midwifery too, and that was their
Mhm.
design, right? Like to
Mhm.
make sure you feel comfortable with whoever you're with when this baby decides to fly out of you. And so like I I think that is so important because I felt very much at peace, even though my blood pressure was kind of wacky. Like that was important for me.
Information, to be informed. That's
and feeling like no questions off limits for any of these midwives, for my doctor. Like I just felt always like I could ask any questions. In fact, sometimes at the midwifery, I felt like they were giving me more information than I needed. They're like, yeah, then there's going to be this ring of fire, and then this is going to happen. And also, if you want to have sex at this point, that's going to help, break down that uterine lining. And I'm like, oh, what? And of course, when I went into labor, Justin was like, well, they said semen can help things move
you're
along.
I've been waiting to do my fatherly duty.
Just been waiting for his chance.
Oh, Lord.
I do think, V, you said it best, where you said you go to the hospital when you're sick. And I'm like, I feel like that nails it, where I'm not saying like you can't have a baby in a hospital, but I'm like, their expertise is like when things have already gone wrong. Like, I don't know that they're in the business of preventative and like thriving. They're in the business of like, let's help this person survive.
Yeah.
So it is like, it's like taking ownership of like, what do you want to do in a perfect world? And then the oh shit handle is the hospital or a certain setting in the hospital or a certain doctor. But it's like, what do you want for all the steps leading up to that?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing, y'all.
Yeah, you guys too.
So if you're an expectant mother, do what Vernita did and don't follow our advice and say no to drugs, kids. Because they weren't good back then and they weren't good for delivery. So
Lord.
What are y'all nailing this week?
Oh, God.
Oh, I forgot.
Oh, Lord.
Failed both pregnancies.
No.
Nailing.
Come on. This week. Come on.
Nailing motherhood. Next.
Well, I will say my nail this week is I got those Valentines done.
Oh,
we got flowers. Like, I felt so good. Justice walking out of here with her little box this morning.
Ready to go.
Go. So definitely nailed Valentines. And feeling really good about that. Yeah.
But no flu shot. So sorry about your luck, Justice.
No flu shot. Yes. So failing on that. Did not manage to get her flu shot in the middle of what is apparently a very hectic flu season.
Yes.
I can't wait for this one, Jules.
Let's see. So nailing would be Stella's birthday party.
All right.
It was amazing. And then I don't know. It was so good.
Failing? So good. Did you go overboard?
I don't think I went overboard.
Well, that's a yes.
No, I made very smart financial decisions regarding the party.
Okay.
Some might say from the outside looking in,
But there was no shrimp cocktail, right?
There was no shrimp cocktail. We just got pizza, So, yeah. We had Shirley Temples.
You nailed it. Shirley Temples.
Yes.
Starting to get fancy.
And champagne glasses.
I was going to say, okay, keep going. Here we go.
Yeah. Anyways, we'll just end it there. That was a nail. Her party was great. Awesome. And very happy with it. And a fail. Well, Willow is still up. And it's 10:13 p.m. Yeah. So, I don't know.
Not doing great at putting the kids to bed.